As you know, we've been talking a lot about Māori issues over the start of all of last week and this week coming up to Waitangi Day. We had Debbie Ngārawa on last week. We talked about the Kīngitanga hui. We are talking about Ratana, and we are going to be talking and continue to talk about what's upcoming with Waitangi. A lot to do with the relationship or non-so that this government is building or not building with Māori. And so we thought we'd get on. We love being the dumbest people in the room. So we love getting smart people on that have a lot to say and know far more than us for us to learn from. So we want to welcome to the show from Auckland University, Professor Margaret Mutu. Margaret, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Nice to be with you guys.
We always kind of start our conversations, and thank you so much for joining us, by just kind of throwing you the ball. You know what, I mean, you were at a hui all day today. I saw some tweets going around about the kind of things you were talking about today at the hui, to kind of just throw you the ball and go, is there anything that you want to start us off with, understanding that we're looking at Māoridom in general, and particularly what this current government is doing, treating, feels like a bit of a toxic relationship, and what's going on with this government and Māori at the moment, and how Māori are being treated, and how I guess the taonga that Māori hold is being disrespected by this government. So you're welcome to kind of start the conversation. Do you got anything you want to just kind of to nutshell for us about what you're seeing at the moment?
What I'm seeing is that Māori are actually coming together. That's that kotahitanga thing we've been talking about. The need for us to come together, and it's about coming together to protect ourselves from the assaults that are coming in, the racist stuff that's happening to us out on the streets, in the supermarkets, in the shopping malls, particularly those of us, our women, in particular those carrying the moko kauai, are finding themselves just being arbitrarily, abused in the streets. So, but that's sort of the direct stuff. There is a need for us to protect ourselves, so we are coming together. So in some ways, I can see a positive side of this, where we've been sort of jabbed at so badly that we're just coming together and going, right, now we've got to get our act together.
Yeah.
And we've got to sort this.
There's been lots of commentary in the last week that who knew that David Seymour would bring together Māori so well, which is what he wasn't intending on doing. But what a great job he's done at bringing Māori together. No. You talk about coming together. The Kīngitanga hui, did it start there? What was that like? Because you were there.
Yes. So it was, the way it was run was just so good. That's all I can say. What it did was it laid the ground rules before we got there, and it said, please come in peace, please come to find solutions, and let's try and work together. And then they put up a couple of speakers, because in a hui, as you know, you get the people who do the formal whai kōrero at the beginning. They will lay down sort of the tone of the hui. They will set it. And it was really clear there that we had come together as one, and we needed to sort out and find solutions. And then they had two very, very good speakers, and then a rangatahi speaker at the end, who just said, basically, we all know we're in great pain. We all know we're being absolutely dumped on. We all know that what's happening to us, we're being vilified, we're being demonized, we're being marginalized. We know that. But we've got to do something about it. We've got to recognize what's happening to us and do something about it. Now, please go to your workshops and find solutions for us. And so it gave a very positive, it laid a very positive framework for within which to work. And then I managed to get to a couple of the workshops. I had others going around to the other workshops, all very positive, acknowledging that we were being really badly dumped on, but that we had the power amongst us to change that. And from where I'm coming from, that is about constitutional transformation. Right. It's about Māori taking back control of our lives, stopping interference coming in from those who really don't know what it is to be Māori and to live in your whānau, in your hapu, fight for your lands, fight for your well-being, and fight for your existence. But we do. And because we do know that, then, hey, we know what works and what doesn't work for us, and we just want to be given the freedom to, hey, make our own mistakes, for heaven's sake, instead of having everybody else make our mistakes and then get us to wear them.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can, bear with a couple of thickos here for a second and go...
Nobody's thick.
We've been educated by lots of people. Moana Tufari's been on, Deb Narawa Paka's been on, talking about this. And could you take a half step backwards? Because we're being told by a certain sector of society, i.e. probably those in power right now, in government right now, what the treaty is all about and what it should be looked like in the city, in the country. Could you just give us a bit of a, whether it's the elevator pitch or not, as to what the treaty was when it was signed and how we're trying to be, and I'll use the word conned, as to what the treaty is today and the disparity potentially between the two?
Sure. Okay. And I have to say, it's not just you guys who don't know this. There's a whole lot of Māori as well as Pākehā who don't know this stuff. Okay, so when you're talking about the treaty, you have to take a step back 5 years to 1835, where you had a declaration issued. It's called He Hakaputanga. You'll hear, especially those of us in the north, we always talk about this because we are the guardians of it, especially from around Waitangi. And that was a declaration that was issued because of the way that people at Kororareka, that's Russell, were just running amok. And it was the advice of the British resident to issue effectively a constitutional document that said this is where power lays, this is how you make the decisions. And what that document said was that the ultimate power and authority in this country lay with the rangatira of the hapu. And they would never, ever devolve power because they were the sole ones who had lawmaking powers. And we made laws under our own legal system, that's tikanga. So we would never devolve that power. Acknowledged that the British were there, did say that we needed a bit of help, but that was the constitutional basis of this country. Move on 5 years, that lot at Kororareka still weren't listening, still weren't doing what they're supposed to do. And so the rangatira by that stage are pretty fed up. And they're going, come on, you English people, please keep control of your people. We don't want to have responsibility for them anymore. Please take it. And so the Queen of England agreed that she would take responsibility for her Pākehā, what we call Pākehā, but the British immigrants who are coming in here, the ones who are here already and those yet to come, she would make sure that they stop their lawlessness. And that's quite clear in Te Tiriti. So that is what Te Tiriti did. It confirmed He Hakaputanga, so it confirmed where power and authority lay in the country, so that didn't change. What did change was responsibility for lawless Pākehās, and that would go to the Queen of England. And she was given that, and it was called, the missionaries called it kāwanatanga. Now, for 20 odd years, I've been struggling to get an accurate translation of kāwanatanga. It often gets translated as governance because it's taken from the word kāwana. And kāwana is a transliteration of governor. But governance is not what the rangatira gave to the Queen of England. What they gave her was the right to keep control of her Pākehā citizens. That's right. What she was given. Hey, my latest attempt at it is the controlling mechanism that she needed, whatever. But it sure wasn't governance over the whole country. And it sure wasn't governance or any authority over Māori. Why would we need it? The country was ours. There were several 100,000 of us. Maybe a small percentage of Pākehās running amok at Russell, and you give everything to them or their boss.
Yeah,
it's just
doesn't make any sense.
So, and that's what Te Tiriti was about. Now, you do get that English thing that I will only ever refer to as a draft, because this was one that Hobson drafted up with his colleagues in there, and it was pretty clear that what they were wanting was not, first of all, it wasn't the instructions they were getting from England, from London, but they wanted to take over the country. Now, that would have been effectively a declaration of war. And because there is no way in the world that rangatira were going to do that. And the missionaries knew that. Mm-hmm. And so the missionaries, when they were given that English language draft to translate, did not translate any cession of sovereignty, because that's what the English one says, was that the rangatira cede their sovereignty. Well, the missionaries left that out. And however, it wasn't quite as simple as that, because a lot of Pākehā who were there at the signing knew what Hobson and his mates wanted and kept demanding that the missionaries explain that, remembering the practical realities on the ground. This was Aotearoa at that stage. It was a Māori country. The language of communication was Māori. It wasn't English. And these rangatira didn't speak English at all. But you had the few Pākehās who were there going butcher's hooks at the missionaries because they would not tell Māori that really what these guys in their fancy clothes and what have you wanted to do was take over the country. Wouldn't tell them. And so the rangatira, because they'd already picked this up, they deliberately questioned the missionaries and said, have you come here to take over our country, steal our land, da-da-da-da? And the missionaries said, no, that is not what this treaty is. Read the treaty. It has nothing in there about that. All it does is confirm he hakaputanga and give responsibility for those lawless people over there to the Queen of England.
Can I ask a really dumb question? A really, really dumb question. Did the chiefs sign the Māori version, Te Tiriti, or did they sign the English version?
They signed the Māori one because that's the one that was read to them.
So why are we even talking about the English one? That's not the signed contract.
Exactly. And that's why I have said it's a draft only. It never made it through to, the signing. Now, you need to be careful about that, because in Waikato Heads and in the Manukau, the English draft did make it down there. I think it went because it was going with missionaries, and so missionaries were given the English draft, but they were also given the Māori one because they had to read the Māori one. It was useless. It was pointless trying to read out the English one. Nobody understood it. Yeah. So they read out the Māori one, and then I don't know whether it's because they ran out of space on it, but the missionary there, his name was Monsell, he said to them, I have here the English of it, which you don't understand, but I can assure you it means exactly the same, so it's okay for you to sign it. Right. So 37 rangatira signed it there on the assurance that it was exactly the same as the other. Now, I don't know whether Monsell's Māori was just not good enough for him to understand that there was a major difference between the two, or what it was. But what the descendants say is that Monsell was a person they trusted and had no reason to believe that he would have lied to them, basically. Yeah. And I don't know that he necessarily lied either. I just don't think his language was good enough.
I was just thinking that's something that people do on trust, right?
Yeah.
The established relationship.
There's actually a really good book called Bible and Treaty by Keith Newman, which talks a lot about this. And Chewie, so, Keith is who we had on last week talking about Ratana Revisited. So it's quite an interesting read. Sorry, Chewie, you want to jump in? You got some questions?
No, I was just saying, it does sound, I think that's something that's often overlooked is the relationship between Māori and Europeans pre treaty and pre-major waves of colonization as well. Like down here in Otago, there's many stories of intermarriage and relations and trade between sealing parties and whaling parties and that sort of, way before there was any sort of formal settlement in this area. And of course, people that were coming in here and doing those sort of jobs and being missionaries and that sort of thing, of course you would speak the language of the people that were already here. That was the language of trade. That was the language of agreement and that sort of thing. So it makes sense that the treaty that was signed, the treaty that was negotiated, was in Māori. And I find it really interesting as someone that's in his early 40s, right? Is it's only really been recently that it's come up, this conversation about the two versions, the original and the translation. And I think this just shows that there needs to be more discussion about what is in a lot of cases the founding myth of this country, of what the treaty is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding just because it hasn't been taught properly, hasn't been discussed.
And that's, well, it's our job in the universities to make sure that it does get taught, but we don't get as many students, I guess, as I would like to have. So, and what I do say to my students about this is just think of the practical realities back there in 1840, when, you know, this country was Māori through and through and completely under the control of Māori. Why would they do anything as crazy as what
that's what I keep coming back to, is it makes absolutely no sense. And it doesn't matter if it's a cultural thing, it's just from a human point of view. No one would just give away everything.
You give away who you are, you give away the control of your country, give away the control of your lives. Come on. But
it's just people not being critical, or B, being dishonest. I like to simplify things. I'm a fairly simple person, Margaret. And I'm like, let's say I owned a subdivision and I was selling it off, and I had 40 sections in the subdivision, and I owned them all because I was selling them off, and someone came in and bought one, right? They're not all of a sudden going to be the ones in charge, are they? Because I still own 39 of them. The one's not going to be making all the rules. It's the 39. How can we think it would have been any different in 1840?
And that's exactly it. It's the practical realities. But of course, what happened after that is that a whole lot more like the ones running amok in Kororareka came here and literally ran amok everywhere and promulgated these myths about, now, we'll give you some land. So this is my own tupuna. Yes, you've got nowhere to stay. You're as poor as hell. You go and stay over there and we'll help you build a house, and that's okay. And then that person, after the treaty is signed, claims that he was given 2,000 acres of land. And it's as simple as that. And they kept doing that and kept doing that. And after they'd done it, they had to justify what they'd done. So they built these myths. And one of the myths, of course, was that we had ceded sovereignty. And therefore, what these people were doing, running amok, stealing all of our land, stealing our resources, and then just totally dispossessing us, somehow or other became okay and became the norm. It just defies logic completely, but that's what they did. And it's a bit like David Seymour now, you know, if I keep saying these things and keep saying these things, then maybe they'll come true. Sorry, David Seymour, it don't work like that.
Well, this has brought us to the part of the conversation. I guess we can talk to the today. I mean, David Seymour is telling the nation that this referendum will unite us. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not quite sure what he's going to unite, because what he's trying to do, when the media kindly sent me the leaked document, and I had a look at his bill that he proposes. Well, you're not allowed to be Māori anymore in this country, and you have to all be New Zealanders. And by the way, I'll lift out this phrase and that phrase and mistranslate it, and that will become what this country is. So you're only ever New Zealanders. Now, if he thinks that that's not being insulting and divisive, I don't know what he thinks it is. So what he's doing at the moment is he is trying to divide New Zealand by saying there are no Māori in this country, and therefore you Māori just be quiet because you're only New Zealanders. If that isn't poking a bear, I don't know what is poking a bear.
I'll just show people, we have talked about this, but just to revisit it, one of the big parts that you're talking about is that the New Zealand government will honour all New Zealanders in the chieftainship of their land and property rights. So he's making the relationship between the Crown and all New Zealanders as opposed to between the Crown and iwi. And that brings me to another question. We heard today that Mr. Luxon and Mr. Seymour are in kind of different places on this. Mr. Luxon in the media scrum was asked about how he thought the relationship via the treaty was, and this is what he said.
So to ask them different views expressed within the government, personal views on whether you see the treaty as a partnership or not. Can I ask for your personal view?
Yeah, look, my personal view is that it's a relationship between Crown and iwi. It's akin to a partnership, and you know, as we've been working through over a number of decades and years, we'll continue to work through that.
So you feel
comfortable using that? You disagree with David Seymour? Well, personally, that's how I think about it. Yeah.
So you do disagree with the way that David Seymour is?
As I said, I see it as a relationship between Crown and iwi, and I see it akin to a partnership, which is what many have seen over the last decade.
And that obviously continues on for another 3 or 4 minutes, where him saying exactly the same line over and over again. But he does state very clearly the Crown and iwi, whereas David Seymour is saying the Crown and New Zealanders. So I don't know what's going to happen and whether it will go beyond the first reading, but if Luxon was to stick to what he thought, then he can't support it. What do you think about the disparity between the two?
Oh, well, they're totally different, because Seymour, having listened to him quite by fluke, I have to say, on Sunday, but my academic side of me tells me I have to listen to everyone, so I went back and listened to it very, very carefully. He is quite clear that everybody is only a New Zealander, and you do not identify yourself by your, well, he talked about identity not being allowed to have a say in this. But essentially what he was saying was, you will forget that you have whakapapa, you will forget that you are Māori, and that there is no such thing as a partnership between Māori and the Crown, or rangatira and the Crown. He's really, really clear about that cannot happen. So what you've just seen, well, I hadn't realised that Luxon had said that, is exactly the opposite. Of what Seymour is saying, exactly the opposite.
Yeah, so that'll make the one thing we've been worried about, Margaret, and you know, I haven't heard this in the media yet, is Luxon could actually go, no, National's not supporting this, but we'll make it a conscience vote, and then National's not supporting it. No one's. That's not an accusation that we're the only ones that have been talking about that, but it was just a thought. Look, my last question. So, I mean, now you correct me anything that I say that's wrong, but it seems to me that the relationship between the Crown and Māori at the moment is more toxic than I've ever seen in my lifetime. Maybe it's right. Maybe that's right or wrong. If it is, who is the spearhead of the problem, do you think? Is it Luxon? Because he's the Prime Minister. Without him, nothing happens. Or is it Seymour? Or is it Winston Peters? Or is it the three-headed taniwhara, as we heard described the other day? Where's who has ultimate responsibility for the vibe, for the feelings that New Zealanders are having at the moment around this debate?
Well, I think the key instigators of it were definitely David Seymour, Winston Peters, and alongside him, Shane Jones. However, responsibility ultimately lies with Chris Luxon.
Yeah.
It's his job to sort it out. And that is definitely the approach that National Iwi Chairs Forum will take, because we do try to work very closely with governments. I have to say that the National Party part of this three-headed whatever is still open to coming and talking to us. You know, after the results of the election and all the nastiness that was being tossed at Māori, I would have thought they wouldn't have come and talked to us, but they did. And they have been far more open, but that's just the National Party side. I have to say, there has been no approach from the other two. to talk to us. Maybe we'll see them. We've got National Iwi Chairs Forum this week at Waitangi. Maybe we'll see some of them on Friday. I'm not sure.
It's been fantastic for you to come on tonight. Thank you so much. Chewie, if you've got anything else you want to add in, you can. But before you go, Margaret, I want to put up a super chat that we've had from JC because it's lovely. JC says, can we send Margaret door to door for cups of tea in Epsom, talk some sense into the muckrakers? I'm assuming it's for thank you for the super chat, JC. We appreciate that. So yeah, I'm done. Chewie, do you have anything you want to wrap on, Chewie?
I just have one question. There's a lot of talk with people that watch our show and that sort of thing about what the best, what in your opinion, what's the most effective way the Pākehā can support Māori in this fight so that they don't feel like they're doing it all by themselves?
Good question.
Oh, thank you very much for that question.
Great question.
Because it's one of the things, my Ngāti Kahu, so I'm the chair of Ngāti Kahu way up in the far north. And I've asked them what instructions that I could take to Tūranga Waiwai. And one of them was that we ask our tauiwi allies, which includes our Pākehā allies, if they could please come and help us by being a buffer between us and the Crown. And challenge the government, challenge the Crown, because if you can see what's happening to us, for heaven's sake, instead of us having to say it, because they don't listen to us, instead of us having to say it, would you please say it?
Margaret, I think you've just written the what do they call it? Like the dream board for this show and what we're trying to do. So is that what it's called? The vision board, the whatever it's called anyway. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Margaret. Thank you for joining us live as well. People are able to watch and participate. People in the chat, you're going bananas in a good way. We're sorry we didn't get to all your chats, but we'll talk to you guys once Margaret's gone. So thank you so much. And we hope we can have you back on again sometime. This has been amazing. We've all learnt. And I just want to say thank you from us for you coming on.
Kia ora, and lovely to talk to you guys.
Thanks, Margaret.